Who want a ticket straight to them pearly gates?
I'm sure everyone watching this seen the Tekken Force leak that happened when PC players cracked the beta. This sent shockwaves around the whole entire pretty much fighting game community. You had Mortal Kombat people being blown away, Tekken fans, Street Fighter, everyone was awestruck by what we were seeing Tekken 8 attempt. Now, when I covered the leak, I had to put a little asterisk, like this may or may not be Tekken Force. It's definitely real, it's definitely something like paying kind of homage to that, but slapping the Tekken Force label on it, we just can't say so yet, because Tekken has tried many different versions before. Tekken Force, Scenario Campaign, Devil Within, and you kind of got to be careful about what you label it, because each of the three, who knows, there could be some other fourth thing, that's what we're going to talk about in this video, but whatever you label it, Scenario Campaign, Tekken Force, Devil Within, or something else, those all have different implications. Story, a separate game mode, this and that, so you got to be very careful with talking about that. And the fact that the whole community went down this Tekken Force road is kind of a dangerous one. There is a lot of people who's trying to steer the community back into like the neutral, like we don't know what this is. And I thought it was very interesting that like a day later, 2 days later, this IGN interview pops up and Michael Murray is kind of talking about this. Of course, he doesn't say leak. Of course, he doesn't say Tekken Force, but he very directly addresses what this game mode is and will be. And at the beginning of this video, I just want to say I told you so. A video that I uploaded October 3rd. I was talking about the possibilities of Tekken Force being in Tekken 8. And basically I came to the conclusion that it's just too much. The game is too expensive. They're already trying all of these different things. And just from looking at it from just a player's perspective, it looks like they're already doing too much to add another entire Tekken Force mode on it. That's what I said in October 3rd. So when this leak happened, a lot of people was like, this video aged like milk. But now that we have this interview with Harada, it seems like what I was saying is more so truth than just, you know, random blabbering. So let's get into it. It starts off with them talking about Tekken 7.
First, touch on Tekken 7 a little bit. That was a big learning experience. You know, we released the game and supported for 5 years, and we kind of had a little bit of a chance there to kind of test different things and see what resonates with fans a lot.
I like this here because they do talk about how Tekken 7 was this testing ground. DLC was pretty sporadic. You talk about them doing 2 characters, then doing 6 characters in the next season pass, and then doing what they did 4, and then they went back to 2. So they were kind of all over the place and playing around with the numbers, how many stages they were giving out, how much this, how much that. And it really was a learning experience for all of us, not only the developers. And I want all of us to take that, you know, knowledge of what happened in Tekken 7 and apply that in Tekken 8. So we can, one, give the best feedback we can, but then also they can use that feedback and use what they already learned to make the game the best as possible. But let's move on. This is when they start talking about story and we get into some of the debunking leaks and stuff like that. So we're starting to get into that territory. Let's start.
There's a lot of different CG scenes that kind of give a little bit more background into what's going on with the characters. You have little mini games, like Lars had this. He could shoot a gun on one of the stages, if you remember. Yeah. So there's little things like that where you change up the combat that you don't typically find in the head-on-head combat in Tekken 8. So that kind of stuff is, we could say, it's safe to say that it'll return for Tekken 8. Obviously, it'll look a lot better. And the volume also has been increased for Tekken 8. And I can't like talk a whole lot about some of the story content yet.
It starts off with him talking about what they did in past games. You know, they went from doing character endings, then in Tekken 7, also kind of Tekken 6, they added these CGI cutscenes where, you know, the characters look really cool and they're fighting and they're talking. And then it kind of transitions into like a normal battle, right? You have the rounds, you know, you fight the person, the health bar drains down, and then boom, cutscene again. But then what he talks about is when Lars is shooting the gun. This is a very small portion of Tekken 7, and a lot of players may not even remember it. But when Lars is saving Jin Kazama, there's a section there where he pulls out a gun and he shoots soldiers. He is saying here, Michael Murray, is that the quote-unquote Tekken Force leak is not Tekken Force, but it's actually that. It's that, but it's expanded upon. like he says, the volume is increased. So instead of Lars pulling out his gun and shooting people in between rounds, now Lars will be running around fighting soldiers, fighting jacks in between rounds. Maybe Nina is like 20 feet away, 20 yards away, whatever, and then Lars has to fight through all of these waves of enemies to get to her, and then the actual traditional battle starts. It's really interesting that this interview happened after the leak. Like, I don't know if this was planned or I don't know if this was because of the leak, but Michael Murray is kind of giving us a good idea of what this actually is. And once again, I think this is debunking the idea that Tekken Force will be in Tekken 8. And this is something that I already predicted. This is something that I already expected. So for me, this isn't a letdown. Looking at everything else that Tekken 8 does, it's in no way like a letdown, you know?